So we'll pull up our notes for today. So again, our test is tomorrow, which is Tuesday, March 2nd. Crazy, it's already March. So talking about all the different topics that are going to be on our test, biggest thing with this one is just knowing our different methods of graphing. So we're going to graph a bunch of different ways. So if I ask you guys to graph a particular way, you need to graph like that, using that method. So you can't just say, well, intercepts are my favorite way to graph, I'm going to always graph that way. So just so you guys know, if I ask for a particular method, you have to use that one. So in section 4.1 and 4.2, I believe both of these were tables of values. Let me just, sorry, I'll grab my little cheat sheet so I know what I wrote here in the past. I have my notes in here, but I didn't print them today, so. Oh yeah, oh, so in 4.1 we plotted points, sorry, forgot about that. So yep, on the test you'll be able to show me that you guys know how to plot points. Hopefully that's not an issue for you. I will ask you guys to name if it's in its particular quadrant or if it's an intercept. And so remember, the quadrants go counterclockwise, so like the opposite way of a clock, and they start in the upper right. So knowing those quadrants for our coordinate points. And the coordinate points are obviously x, y. In section 4.2 is where we got into actually graphing by a table. So again, on the test, if it says make a table and graph, you have to make a table and graph that way. You can't say, well, I know that other way to graph is way easier, I'm going to use that method. Knowing how to use a table of values is an important concept, as if our graphs start getting more difficult or if they're not a straight line, knowing how to make that table is going to be helpful. So you do have to know how to graph by a table. So that's where we get to pick the x values, and then we substitute those x values in to find the y values. Now, out of ease for grading, I'm probably going to give you the x values to use, just so that I can quickly grade it and see that you used the right, or you got the right y values from that. Typically, I have you guys do a negative, a 0, and a positive or 2. So, remembering that sometimes picking different values is helpful depending on the type of equation we have. So these are the x values that we're going to substitute in to find our y. So I'm going to put negative 1 in. So negative 3 times negative 1 is going to be 3 plus 2 will give me 5. Negative 3 times 0, so again, we're just putting these values in here. Negative 3 times 0 is 0, plus 2 would be 2. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3, plus 2 is negative 1. And then this last one's going to be a negative 6 plus 2, so negative 4. Now we're ready to graph that based off our table. So those all become coordinate points now on our graph. So negative 1, 5. And it's going to be finicky with me here. Try making this just fatter. See if that works. Oh, that's way too big. I guess we'll go smaller than that. That's okay. negative 1, 5. That's kind of, oh well. 0, 2, 1, negative 1, and then 2, negative 4. But we get the idea that we can graph a line with that. And remember, when you guys graph your line, I know this sounds picky, but do try to draw a straight line as best you can, and then put arrows on either end. So be careful about, I don't know if you have yours flipped. So X, you move like left or right first, and then up or down. So I don't know, because yours looks like it. So all of our lines should look alike. Sorry, I'm not going for uniqueness or creativity points here. All of our lines should look alike. Now the next two were those special cases, if you guys recall. So I was going to suggest we put both of these on the same graph so that we make sure, can you put that away please? That's what I'm asking you. So these two are two separate lines. We're going to put them on the same graph. Thank you, sorry. So remembering that when there's just one variable, these are those special cases. So if you guys recall, if it helps, I think a table of values is helpful for these. You can, if you just remember how to do it without having to draw a table, that's fine with me. But so in this case, remember if y is 7, and I pick whatever I want, bless you, for x, y is just going to always be 7. So this is a special case graph in this circumstance, where this is just going to be a flat line at 7. So negative 1, 7. What did I use there? Negative 1, 7. 0, 7. 1, 7. So it's just going to be a flat line at 7. Zero slope, 0 fun. Yep. So if you needed a table of values, you could use one. On this one, I'd be okay with you just saying, I know that line is just a flat line at 7. How about then x is negative 2? Do you guys remember what that type of line would be then? If y equals is just flat,
undefined.
That's going to be the undefined line. So again, if you want to think about it as a table, you can. You don't have to in this case. On this one, on the test, x is always going to be negative 2. It doesn't matter what y is. Y could be 1, 2, 3. A little bit smaller and see if that helps. So negative 2, 1. Negative 2, 2. So just a vertical line straight up and down, if I can get them in the right spots. So I just figured to save on graph space, we could put them on the same graph. Typically, I won't have you guys graph 2 lines on the same graph paper. This one is just totally out of preservation of space. So on ones like these, I don't expect any work. If I say to use a table of values, I expect you guys to show me a table of values. Any questions there at all? So then from there, we went to talking about graphing by intercepts. So intercepts was where we only found the 2 points, but they were the 2 points on the axes. And so in that case, those points were kind of like nice points to work with. So and it tells me to list both the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So I'll have a spot on the test for you guys to be able to list that for me and show me what you know about that intercept. So I'll have like a little line for you so you don't forget to tell me that. If you guys recall, intercepts is where each of the variables equals 0. It kind of takes turns equaling 0. So this one, y equals 0, and this one, x equals 0. So it's always the opposite. And so again, on the test, if I say graph by intercepts, you have to use this method. Because there are particular cases where this makes more sense, and at this point I'm not asking you to discern that, but you have to know how to use both ways. So this one, I put 0 in for my y. So I'm going to put 0 in for y to that equation. The good news is with putting 0 in for a variable, it's a really easy equation to solve because this just cancels. So I get 4x equals 8. So what does x have to equal? 2. So my x-intercept is 2, 0. So I can put that on my graph already. A little too small. All right. Anyway, then our y-intercept is where x equals 0. So then when I put 0 in for my x, this first part becomes 0. Sorry, that should be an 8 over here. This time I have a negative y equals 8. What does that mean y is going to equal? There's like a negative 1 in front of it. So if I divide by negative 1, what does y end up being? Negative 8. There we go. Yep. So my other intercept is 0, negative 8. So when I go to plot that point, 0, negative 8 is down here. And then I have 2 points is enough to make a line. So I don't need to find a whole bunch of other points. I can just use those 2 points, if I can draw a line through them. Hopefully draw better lines than I do. And it goes through both points. So I'm looking for intercepts in this case. And that was probably the one that I felt like you guys, when we did the Kahoot on Tuesday, I felt like this one was the rockiest one where you're kind of like, oh, I haven't remembered how to do that. And so that's how we review for a test. That's why it's not like a POC test the day, you know, you just walk in one day and I give you a test. Speaking of that, I do want to get you guys your notes quizzes back when we'll take a break here in a second, but I'll get you guys your notes quizzes back as well. All right, so slope. Actually, still have slope on the board from Thursday. So slope formula. So this is one of the 2 formulas you're going to want to know for this test. So you're going to want to have the slope formula memorized. I just realized I need to be on the screen here. So slope. So I will ask you this formula. So I'll have a little spot on the test where you're going to get a point for knowing this formula. So long as you have it memorized, you would get the points for that. If you don't have it memorized, I can fix it for you and make sure you know the formula, but you would lose those points right away. So it's kind of like that part of the test is graded right away. So this is the slope formula. We also can use rise over run. So if I have 2 points, I can find the slope using the formula now. And remember, it's the y's on top of the x's. So xy, xy. So I'm going to subtract the y's. So I'm going to do 3 minus 8. Now if you're like, I want to do 8 minus 3, that's fine, as long as you're consistent that you subtract the same way in that one problem. So I did 3 minus 8. Struggle with my 8s there. And then if I'm going this way, I have to do that again. Negative 4 minus 6. So I get a negative 5. This is negative 10. And 2 negatives make a positive. This is going to be a positive, so it's going to become just 5 over 10. But I can also simplify that. I can divide these each by 5. So this ends up just being 1/2. So all it asked me to do on this one is find the slope. And then finally, we'll take a break after this one here. We're trying to find the slope from a graph. In this case, you could go back and use this formula. So just so if you guys didn't realize, these were two separate problems. You could use like the formula for this, but if it's already on the graph paper, I really like using rise over run. I think it's a lot easier to do. So right away, because from this one, I couldn't tell if that was going to be positive or negative just by looking at those points. I would have had to kind of visualize plotting them, and I obviously didn't do that. So in this case, I can look at this and know this is going to be a negative slope. Nice negative downhill. I know that going into the problem. I have to figure out rise over run, and I basically can pick any of the points to work with, and I usually just stick close together. So if this is point 1, this is point 2. To go from point 1 to point 2, I have to go down. My rise is down 1. And then I have to go across. I count how many spaces I go, blocks, and I'm going to the right 4. So down 1 and right 4, so it's a negative 1/4 slope. Now, had you picked points that were further apart, you would have had to simplify. So the closer your points are together, the less simplifying you have to do. All right? Questions there? All right, so why don't we get started? And let me get you guys your notes quizzes back, and then we might just do a few would you rathers just to get you guys up and moving. Grab our notes quizzes. So these went in the grade book. Remember, notes quizzes don't impact your grade a ton because it's just like an open notes quiz. But if you guys, if you did poorly, it's kind of showing you maybe you should be taking better notes, because these are things that I find to be really, really important. I don't just put them on here to try and trick you. I think all of these topics are ones that are really, really important to what we're learning. That feels getting rowdy next door. They are little scratch and sniff, little stars. They're great. Hi. So you guys see these, and then these you guys can keep. And these are your notes quizzes, just checking that you guys are taking good notes. If you need to kind of change how you guys take notes, if that's not working for you, this is, I've given these notes quizzes. Oh, Reed, I don't know, you're not Reed. I don't know, I don't know what I was looking at. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Reed, do you sit in there? Do you ever sit there? I don't know why I don't know. That's maybe where I thought you sat in my head. I don't know. All right. And yeah, this, again, not that these are worth a ton, but they're hopefully like a little bonus to go on your grade for homework.
I got a gold.
It's grape flavored.
Ooh, I might eat it.
Smell. I don't know.
Tastes like the chlorine.
Yeah, try looking at it. Let me know.
Bleach is my favorite kind of candy.
Did you say bleach is my favorite candy? What did you do? My son Griffin got a scratch and sniff sticker, but this character, they sent home like a photocopy of his test, like for us to see. And Griffin's like, it's scratch and sniff, and he's like scratching it. I'm like, Griffin, that's a photocopy. It doesn't like smell like it, like somebody's trying to scratch and sniff a photocopy. So he was little, but he's still a little bit of an airhead. We like him. We're watching watching The Office, like we're going through seasons of The Office, and we're on season 3. And it just dawned on Griffin that it's a paper company. He was just like, "What paper company?" And it's like season 3. I'm like, "What? Like, what show have you been watching?" Like, he's a little like great gum.
No, it smells like the great children's medicine.
Oh, like the
really
like
bad.
You got fever, and this is like brings you back.
This is Lenny gave me some Pepto Bismol. Easy access. Like that one too.
I like the lavender.
He also gave me he calls it his chest. I yeah, he's trying to chocolate. Instead of online making it. Clayton is obsessed with it. He's trying to get it. I don't think I should leave these in my pocket. That's the way. I feel like you're I forgot I had like.
I'm right here.
Yeah. I once saw an electrician wearing cargo pants and he got his pocket caught on the ladder and almost fell off. Oh, I don't know if it was an electrician. But he was
Yeah, the first case. I threw it.
That's super strong. Scratch.
I can't hear you. I don't know. Yeah. I felt like pickle juice that way. I forgot.
I said, if you gave me a strong.
Alright. No, you're good. You're all good. Okay. Actually, I'll stop this video for right now. We're gonna do some Would You Rather. Oh, those of you guys online, there is a notes quiz in there for today for you guys. So.